Being a teenager in the 1960s wasn't just an experience, it was a vibe. The 60s were bold, rebellious, colorful, and full of change. From the music blasting on vinyl to the new slang, the fashion revolutions, the protests, and the romance of first dances, it was a decade of discovery and defiance. If you were a teen back then, this one's for you. And if you weren't, you're about to find out what you missed. Music in the 60s didn't just play in the background. It was the soundtrack of every teen's life. It started with the lingering influence of Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. But once the Beatles hit U.S. soil in 1964, everything changed. British invasion bands like the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, and the Who had teens rushing to local record stores and tuning into the radio every chance they got. At the same time, Motown artists like the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, and the Temptations were topping the charts and bringing soul into suburban homes. Whether you were twisting to Chubby Checker, slow dancing to the Righteous Brothers, or going full hippie with Jefferson Airplane, music shaped teen identity in every corner of America. Music wasn't just a soundtrack, it was a social identity. You could tell who someone was just by the band patches on their denim jacket or the records in their collection. Many teens picked up guitars, formed garage bands, and dreamed of being the next Beatles or Hendrix. AM radio stations dominated car rides and bedrooms alike, with DJs like Wolfman Jack becoming celebrities in their own right. Music TV shows like American Bandstand had teens glued to the screen after school, dancing along and catching the latest trends. Songs became protest anthems, love letters, and rally cries. Music in the 60s didn't follow the mood. It set it. Fashion in the 1960s was as divided as the culture itself. Early in the decade, teenage girls wore knee-length skirts, saddle shoes, and beehive hairdos. Boys, think Letterman jackets, slicked back hair, and chinos. But as the decade progressed, styles exploded. The mod look hit from London. Bold patterns, miniskirts, go-go boots, and turtlenecks were all the rage. Bell-bottoms, fringe vests, tie-dye shirts, and peace signs defined the more hippie look by the late 60s. For many teens, fashion was a statement of rebellion, identity, and belonging. Girls would iron their hair flat, or sleep with orange juice cans in their hair to get that perfect straight look. Boys' hairstyles were changing too, from the clean crew cuts of the 50s to the longer mop tops inspired by British bands. Department stores stocked up on paisley shirts and corduroy everything, but many teens started shopping secondhand to break free from cookie-cutter fashion. Style tribes were forming: mods, hippies, greasers, surfers, each with their own look, their own rules, and their own attitude, and accessories mattered just as much as clothing. Everyone had a favorite peace sign necklace, beaded headband, or a strand of love beads hanging around their neck, each item a quiet but deliberate statement of identity. High school in the 60s was where everything happened. Jocks, greasers, preps, and the growing counterculture crowd all mixed in the hallways. You started your day with the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe sat through typing class, and after-school clubs were packed with real passion. There were pep rallies, sock hops, and prom, where everyone dressed their best and danced under hanging streamers. Passing notes in class, crushing on someone at lunch, detention for chewing gum. Simple, innocent, unforgettable. Teachers were stricter, and discipline was real. You could get detention for chewing gum, running in the halls, or talking back. There were no phones, no screens. If you wanted to flirt, you passed a note or arranged to meet after school behind the bleachers. Typing class was essential, preparing students for a world of typewriters and clerical jobs. Home economics taught girls to sew, cook, and manage a household, while boys took shop class and worked with real tools, building everything from birdhouses to basic furniture. Lunchrooms buzzed with talk about music, weekend plans, and who got a new car. Some schools still enforced strict dress codes, demanding skirts below the knee, no denim, and shirts neatly tucked in. A far cry from the freedom that would come just a decade later. Teen romance in the 60s had its own magic. You might meet someone at the roller rink or a school dance, and if you were lucky, they'd let you walk them home. Going steady meant wearing their class ring or jacket. Dates were simple: grabbing a milkshake at the local soda fountain or watching a double feature at the drive-in. No texting, no swiping. Just butterflies, vinyl slow songs, and that nervous feeling before your first kiss. Drive-in theaters were where relationships began, even if the movie playing was just background noise. Teens exchanged love letters, sprayed with perfume or folded into origami-like shapes passed between lockers. Asking someone out often meant a nerve-wracking phone call on the family landline, with your parents listening from another room. There was a code of conduct. Bring flowers, be home before curfew, walk them to the door, and always open the car door. And when a breakup happened, it wasn't posted online. It lived in diaries, scribbled pages, and long, tearful talks with friends. Heartbreak hurt, but it was real, raw, and part of growing up in a world without instant distractions. As the 1960s rolled on, being a teenager meant confronting the world. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and the fight for equality stirred something in young people. Teens didn't just watch history, they made it. From organizing walkouts to joining marches, many found their voices during this time. Long hair, protest songs, and peace signs became symbols of a generation that dared to question the rules. Many teens started reading underground newspapers and questioning authority, even if that meant debating their own parents at the dinner table. Young people were becoming politically aware, watching the nightly news and discussing Vietnam, civil rights, and justice during lunch breaks and homeroom periods. Burning draft cards, joining peace rallies, and wearing black armbands weren't just rebellious, they were statements of belief. Girls challenged traditional roles too, pushing back against outdated norms and embracing the early waves of feminism. Not every teenager took to the streets, but most could feel the shift. They were no longer expected to quietly conform. They were becoming a force, reshaping the culture whether they realized it or not. But it wasn't all protests and politics. The 60s were fun too. Teens lined up for The Ed Sullivan Show, spent hours perfecting dance moves, and raced muscle cars down quiet suburban streets. Board games, comic books, transistor radios, and jukeboxes kept them entertained. If you had a lava lamp in your room and a stack of 45s, you were set. And let's not forget the fads: hula hoops, troll dolls, and the twist. Every teen had their favorite hangout: a diner, a pinball arcade, the record store, or a friend's garage set up with beanbags and milk crates stacked with vinyl. Saturdays were often spent playing kickball in the street, going for bike rides, or saving up change for a jukebox session or a trip to the soda fountain. Car culture was massive. If you had access to a set of wheels, you cruised the local strip, blasting tunes and hoping to get noticed. Slang was its own language. Things were groovy, people were far out, and if something wasn't cool, it was a total drag. And the snacks? Root beer floats, penny candy, and frozen TV dinners during sleepovers. All part of a fun, slower-paced teen life that felt full even without technology. The world was moving fast. Teenagers in the 1960s grew up alongside massive leaps in technology. TVs were becoming a fixture in every home. Families gathered to watch everything from I Love Lucy to news of astronauts blasting off into orbit. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon in 1969, it wasn't just a moment in history. It was a moment they witnessed live. Imagine being a teenager and watching mankind touch the stars. Teens watched NASA launches in classrooms, eyes wide as rockets climbed into the unknown. Toy stores exploded with space-themed gear, astronaut helmets, ray guns, moon boots, anything to mimic the era's scientific wonder. Home tech evolved fast. Polaroid cameras let kids take photos instantly, rotary phones brought friends' voices into the room, and record players with built-in speakers were prized possessions. The average teen might have dreamed of being a rock star, but just as many imagined life in orbit. drifting in silence above the earth. Sci-fi books, comic strips, and movies fueled that imagination, giving kids a sense that anything, truly anything, was possible in their lifetime. Being a teenager in the 1960s was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You lived through innocence and upheaval, first loves and first losses, conformity and rebellion, all wrapped in a decade that shaped history. Whether you wore a tie-dye shirt or a varsity sweater, the memories live on in grainy Polaroids, worn records, and stories told to younger generations. To those who were there, thank you for being part of something unforgettable. And to those of us who weren't, we can only look back with admiration, curiosity, and just a bit of envy.